Alright, what I ended up doing was putting another 5 thous shim in there, and I checked my play again, and I'm now down to 10 or 11 thousandths depending on how I go with it. The manual calls for 5 to 15. I could put another 5 in there and get it down close to 6, but I think that would be too close to the bottom end of it. Says you do want a trace of play in there so as to not put too much pressure on the snap rings and have them pop off. And you don't want too little, because then you get you don't want too little, because then the shaft can slide back and forth and pop a snap ring off. And you don't want too much. Wait a minute. You want enough in play so how can I word this? I'm getting tongue-tied. If you have too much in play, the shaft moves too far, it can shift from one side to the other real hard and cause the snap ring to pop off. If you don't have enough, it causes excessive wear on the snap rings. So I think we're about 11 right now. I'm happy with that. Next thing the manual calls for is to put the shims or the washers that go between the snap ring and the oil seal on right now, but not to put the oil seals in. And I'm only thinking that's just in case for some reason you got to take it back apart. You don't want to damage your oil seals. So since there's nothing holding the shims in there and I'm going to be moving this thing around, I'm electing not to put them in right now. I'll probably regret that later when I put the seals on and forget them, but anyhow, that's what I'm doing right now, and I'll read up a little bit more and see what our next step is. Alright, next step it talks about is putting the pinion gear in. That's what I was talking about yesterday, getting that bearing off. I was looking at my two new bearings. I got brand new bearings to put on the pinion shaft, and they're the same part number, and I took one of them and put on the free end of the shaft right there, the same bearing. That one fits up there. It's got a little play, not a whole lot. It's enough you can push it up there, but it'll probably be alright. But I noticed this other one slides right on. It's got a lot of slop in it. They had the same part number on the outside of the bag, so I looked at the bearing, the numbers on the side of the bearing, and they're, I think it's an 8201 on them. It's either 82 or 62, probably 82. But anyhow, they're both the same. Well, that one's 82. That one's probably 82. Anyhow, the inside bore of this one that goes onto the shaft measures exactly 500 thousandths. The inside bore of this one measures 473 thousandths. So there's 7 thousandths difference between the two of them right there. And of course I can't get a good measurement on that one, but they both should be the same. GW 9401, a GW 9404, and a 9404. So they're supposed to be the same. So it looks like I'm gonna have to get back up with Super X Power and see about getting a replacement. Notify them of this problem. But in the meantime, I can go ahead and try to get this bearing off of this one. And in the manual, they tell you to put it into a smooth jaw vise, and come down just to the grooves right here, but don't put pressure on them, because you can get underneath the edge of the seal of the race and then take a pin and drive it out. So that's what I'm going to go try to do now. Okay, I did took this into my mill vise, which had smooth jaws on it, and I brought it right up to the edge of these, so I had just a smidge of play. And the corner of my jaws came right up to there. Took a drift punch and nice and easily just pressed the shaft, tapped the shaft right out of it. Worked slick as a whistle. So now I got that off, and I also made a phone call to Super X Power and notified them of the situation, and both he and I came to the conclusion it was a manufacturer's defect. I took my magnifying glass and looked, and they both are 6201 bearings, but the inside of one of them measures 500 thousandths where it should be 472. So he's going to ship me out another one tomorrow. So far they've been real good to work with, reasonable prices, quick shipping, and so far with this problem they seem to be all right. So we'll wait for our new bearings to get here, and then we'll get back to it. That's all for now. Alright, while I'm waiting for the bearing to get here for the pinion shaft, I'm doing some cleanup of the pinion gears, and I noticed that there must have been some serious water in this gearbox for a while. I don't know how well this shows up on the camera or not, but there's pitting on these teeth right here. It's not superficial to the gear itself, it's just a little bit of pitting, a little roughness right there, and some right around the outside right here. So I'm going to take some fine emery cloth and polish that up a little bit, and polish up this side right here, and wipe it all down, make sure it's all good and clean, and do the same thing with the shaft over there. And then I'll probably look, see if there's anything else I can clean up while I'm waiting for parts. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to show you the cleanup of this, but I'll probably show you a clip of it once I'm done cleaning it up. Hopefully I can get most of that out of there. Just take a little time. Alright, I took some fine emery cloth and I went over them gears and just took the roughness off of them, and got the face out here, got it nice and smooth, washed it down with some brake parts cleaner, and that figured that's pretty good. Then I also went and took and pressed the one good bearing I had on this side, which would be the left side. So I can go ahead and assemble this. I just can't assemble the other side till I get the bearing, and it has to go in later. What the book calls for is to go ahead and line your gear up, your pinion gear, down inside here. And I'll try to get you off the tripod so you can see what's going on. Okay, you got a smaller gear over there on the far side and a larger gear over here. And this steel gear here meshes with the far side gear, and then see if I can show you that. It meshes right there. The brass gear stays right here where the drive shaft goes on, and then the pinion shaft slides in through this hole here and lines it all up. So that's what we're getting ready to do now. We'll go ahead and see if we can get that shaft in there. Alright, get that lined up down there. I got to remember where the keyway is. I'll bring the keyway up to the top. I've already oiled the shaft up. Start my pinion shaft through there, the keyway on the top. Keyway on the top. See if I can get that started in there. Alright, got her started right there. Now I'm up to this bearing right here, so I have to hold this gear inside in place while I try to tap this bearing in flush. And it doesn't take a whole lot to do that. Then it says to take the cap that came off of it, which would be this one right here, remove the O-ring, the old O-ring, do not install the new one yet, and place it up here and use it to finish driving the bearing in. As such, and we'll check, make sure we're still good. And then until the bearing is flush with the bore. Watch the key to make sure it's entering the gear cluster keyway, which it is. Scroll down a little bit more on my book over here. Rotate the plug so the hole for the roll pin lines up with the hole for the roll pin. Carefully tap the plug towards the inwards until the low speed pinion gear on the shaft also almost touches the low speed gear. Align the gear center mesh, then temporarily secure the plug with a roll pin. And my gear is, the gear that just went in is meshed and lined up with the internal gear. About half a hole to go. I think that'll do it. Now let me see if I can find my roll pin. Now to temporarily secure this plug with the roll pin, what I like to do is I take the pin punch that's the proper size, stick it through till it comes all the way out the other side. That way I know I got everything lined up. And I'll pull her back a little bit, start my roll pin. Yeah, maybe I better go in from the bottom. Alright, start my roll pin in the bottom, gently tap it. I can feel it moving my punch back out, and I'm in there at least halfway. Now it could be a little tricky trying to get this back out because it is real tight up against there, up against the housing. Give it a little twist and pull motion. me get a pair of vice grips to put on there. Get a bite on there with some vice grips, and I can tap the vice grips. There we go. Now, let me do a little bit more reading. Okay, now at this stage, according to the manual, I'm going to need to install the bearing, actually the washer, and then a bearing on the other side, and take the other plug and drive that one in. But since I don't have that bearing, I can't go that far. And then it also later describes how to make sure your pinion gear, your bronze gear right here, is in center line with the bore by looking through this end. And then it describes how to shim on both sides and make sure it stays properly aligned and you get the right amount of in play. But we got to wait for that bearing. So unless I can come up with something else I can do real quick, we may be at a standstill.